Hello and thank you for joining me today. This is a unique kind of video. I usually don't plan my videos, but I have been involved in preparing a very long and detailed tutorial series on Chopin's heroic Polonaise for my website, The Well-Rounded Pianist. And also I mentioned this topic or talked about this topic a little in my last blog, which is also on The Well-Rounded Pianist. If you're a member of The Well-Rounded Pianist, you get access to all my blog entries every week. It's an exciting, booming website. You're welcome to join and benefit from now over 1,900 tutorials. I have more videos on The Well-Rounded Pianist than I do on my BachScholar YouTube channel. And I didn't really plan on doing this video for you today, but I thought it's really important. It's a very important topic that has been preoccupying my mind recently, especially since I started preparing this tutorial series on the heroic Polonaise of Chopin. And it goes like this. If everyone jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you jump off the Brooklyn Bridge? If everyone ate, whatever, fill in the blank, horse excrement. If everyone ate horse excrement, would you also eat horse excrement? You get the picture. Now, a cookie cutter pianist is a pianist who does certain things in certain pieces because everyone does it that way. But is that necessarily a good musical thing to do? Is that necessarily something that the composer wanted? We don't know that. But the problem is I'm running into this problem so much now on YouTube because YouTube has become so highly saturated with performances, both good and bad. But in certain works, like the heroic Polonaise, which I'll talk about here, there's traditions. There's traditions in performance. People don't really realize they're doing certain things. But it's not in the music. People are doing what Chopin did not write. And we want to, as much as possible, we want to be sort of faithful to the composer's intentions as much as possible. But I found this is just definitely not the case in the heroic Polonaise. Also many other works as well. I may talk about those in future videos. But it's really, it's puzzling to me. And it's sort of bothering me lately because I've been doing this tutorial series on it. And I did a recording of this on YouTube back in 2011. You can listen to that if you'd like. And here's the thing. Most pianists don't realize what they're doing. They just do it because everyone else does it. They listen to recordings of everybody else and they try to emulate those recordings of everyone else. But that's the whole trap that you fall into. In that, everyone jumps off the Brooklyn Bridge. Let's say people in New York City became zombies. And there was all of a sudden a big zombie epidemic in New York. And people became zombies, they lost their minds, and everybody started jumping off the bridge and dying. Well, does that make it right? Just because everyone does it, does that make it right? Okay, now let me get to the point. I have a book of Chopin's Polonaises here. Let's look at the first Polonaise. Okay, the first Polonaise, Polonaise number 1. He writes Allegro appassionato here at the beginning, pretty fast. Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. Okay, then he goes on. He gets into the B section. No real change in tempo. There's no change here. but it is sottovoce. It's a little softer here, but there's no change in tempo. Then you get to the C section. He changes keys, and he gets to 5 flats here. He gets into this nice lyrical section here. He gets into this nice lyrical section here. What does he write? Meno mosso. That means less speed or slower. So he wanted this part slower, and he indicated slower for this section. I mean, this is also very, very basic. And then it goes here, and then he has a da capo. And then the da capo brings us back to the beginning where it's allegro appassionato again. So you go back to your faster speed in the beginning. So this Polonaise has 2 kinds of tempi. You have a faster tempo and you have a slower, more lyrical tempo. Now let's look at what he does in the next Polonaise here. Polonaise opus 26 number 2. Well, he has maestoso. That just means majestic. It kind of not really fast, but not really slow. It's kind of a middle tempo. Remember, Polonaises are marches. Marches in 3/4 time. They're military marches. The military Polonaise, that's really redundancy, because all Polonaises by nature are very rhythmic and marked in their character. They're basically marches in 3/4 time, being that marches are usually in duple meter. Well, what does he mark here? Maestoso, agitato here. Agitato means, it implies a little faster. So it's a little agitated here, which means you might want to speed up here a little bit, because he writes agitato. Then he has calando. Calando is the opposite. That means to die away or to get slower. So you get slower through here. Ritardando, accelerando, poco rit. I mean, he's very explicit about what you're to do at the tempo. You speed up, you slow down. He writes that in here. And then you get to a change of key. In this section here, he changes from 6 flats to 5 sharps. Meno mosso again. Less motion or slower. So he has a slower tempo here in this. And then at the end, he has a little adagio for a couple of measures. And then he has tempo 1, back to your original maestoso tempo. And this goes on, and he has some more ritardando here, crescendo, accelerando, ritenuto assai, slow way down, stretto, accelerando e stretto, that means simply just sort of speed up there. So he's very explicit with his markings. Now, let's look at the next Polonaise. The next Polonaise here is the famous military Polonaise, which I think is just redundant anyway, because all Polonaises by nature are sort of military in character. In the military Polonaise, he writes allegro con brio. So that's not maestoso. It's probably a little faster than his normal maestoso. So allegro con brio, allegro with fire. Goes into the next section, not slower, not faster. No tempo change anywhere. No tempo change anywhere. If you look through the military Polonaise, he has no tempo change anywhere. He has simply at the beginning, he has an allegro con brio, and he has no change. That's usually the way people do it. It's very strict, should be pretty much metronomic. For any lack of better term. Going to the next Polonaise there in the same opus number here, allegro maestoso, and once again, just like the military Polonaise in the same opus, he doesn't have any tempo changes, none. Although here he says sostenuto. Actually, no, I take that back. Sostenuto implies a little slower here. So when you get into this section here with 4 flats, he adds a flat. You might want to be a little slower here at sostenuto. Then you get back to your when it goes back to the original theme. then you go back to your original speed. He doesn't write that here, but that's implied. So there is a little change of tempo there, so forth and so on. So when you look through his Polonaises, not just his Polonaises, but all his works, you can see that Chopin was very explicit with what he wanted in terms of tempo changes and character changes in the music. Now, let's talk about the Heroic Polonaise, Opus 53. Okay. There's a tradition. Okay, you might not be aware of this, but there's a tradition that you play the intro any which way you can, as fast as you can on these little runs going up. Thump, dum, bum, bum, take a little pause, and you speed up on these 16th notes, then you stop, and then you put a little fermata, then you speed up again, and you do this dramatic kind of thing. Then the tradition tells us, if you're like everyone, if you are a cookie cutter pianist, you'll do that because everybody does it that way. Then when you get to the main theme, when you get to the famous theme here, most people slow that down because this wouldn't be appropriate at a really fast speed like the intro, so they slow this down to sort of more of a maestoso tempo. Chopin doesn't write anything there though to slow down or speed up. And then it goes on and people just sort of do what they want to do. They have a lot of rubato all over the place, not any one speed. Then eventually when they get to the part where it changes keys, when you get to this part here, it's usually played as fast as possible because people want to show off how fast they can play with their left hand. That's done as fast as possible. And then after that, tradition also tells us, if you are a cookie cutter pianist, when after that, the part with the four sharps with the octaves in the left hand, then he sort of transitions back to four flats. He goes into this new kind of melody here, and most people take that slower because they can't keep up the speed that they were and when they took the really fast speed with the octaves in the left hand. Then you get to this more lyrical. You get to this lyrical section here. Most people take that way down in speed. They go much slower there. Play it very slow and lyrically, and soft, as Chopin indicates, but much slower. Then when the first theme appears again, when the da capo comes here, then they get back to a sort of a faster speed, their original maestoso speed, and then they speed up towards the end. So in all, the average kind of cookie cutter pianist plays about 5 different tempi for this Polonaise. 5 different tempi. They play a really fast one for the intro, slower for the A theme. I didn't mention this part here. They usually do a different tempo here because they can't keep up with that, and then they go as fast as possible for this. You get the idea. What does Chopin mark? Okay, well, we already determined that Chopin was a great composer, and he wrote what he wanted. We saw what he did in his other Polonaises. When he wants menemoso, he writes menemoso, slower. When he wants più mosso, faster, he writes faster. What did he do in the Heroic Polonaise? He did nothing. He wrote maestoso at the beginning. It doesn't say faster here. It doesn't say slower here. It doesn't say as fast as humanly possible when you get to the 4 sharps here. It doesn't say that. He doesn't say faster here. And this book was edited by Mikuli, who was a student of Chopin. So he doesn't say faster here. He doesn't say anything. There is absolutely no change of tempo anywhere in the heroic Polonaise. We have to assume that's what Chopin wanted. Chopin wanted that because he did not indicate any other change of tempi. He has a lot of dynamic changes. In this lyrical section here, towards the end, he has piano, but he doesn't say slower. He doesn't say meno mosso. He doesn't say anything of the sort. What does this tell us? It tells us he wanted this whole Polonaise in one tempo. That's really radical because nobody ever does it that way. I have never heard it done that way. I play it that way, and I teach it that way in my tutorial series, but we never hear it that way. Okay, let me take, and I'm getting really kind of, it gets me upset because people are such cookie cutter pianists. They can't think for themselves. And then let me turn that off for a second. Then if I bring this up to a pianist, it offends them. They get mad that I even suggest that the heroic Polonaise should be in one tempo. Well, it can't be that way. Horowitz doesn't do it that way. Well, Horowitz didn't know Chopin. Yes, Horowitz was a great pianist. There were a lot of great pianists that play this, but are we doing what Chopin wanted and what's best for the music? I don't think so. Okay, so let's take a nice maestoso tempo. I'm not even going to tell you what the speed is. Okay, it's a secret tempo. I'm going to play the main theme at this tempo. I know I hit some wrong notes. Dum, but it's a character. Dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum. It's a march. Very strong march. It's not fast. It's not fast, but it's very persistent and with exact rhythms, no rubato. It's a military march. Bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum. Now, take that tempo. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. And I'm going to do that at the beginning. This nice, persistent maestoso. How many times have you heard pianists play the intro like that? Never. Not once. They always play it. They do this big speeding up, and then they do a fermata, and then they do this big dramatic thing. Chopin didn't want that. He wrote it all in one tempo. Okay, now for the really radical idea. Absolutely mind-shattering, radical idea. This is when it gets really radical. I'm going to put it on the same speed. This speed. Nice maestoso march. And so we get to here now. nice maestoso tempo. How many times have you heard that? Never. It's always played as fast as humanly possible. Chopin did not mark a tempo change here. It should not be faster. It should not be faster. Very, very insistent about that. Very, very insistent about that. No change of tempo whatsoever. It should all be the same. Now what happens? Well, after all that, same thing. Stays exactly the same. And it's still fortissimo here. Now, most people slow way down in the next section. The color changes. The dynamics in the color change. It goes way down to piano. Floats along. This would be the place, if you use rubato, this is the place where you can use a little rubato and get away with it, but still the overall tempo is the same as the beginning. So we have that tempo. The same speed. It doesn't slow down. It's the same. It's a maestoso. Now we have then we go back to the same tempo when we return to the theme. The only difference is you have a fortissimo there. And then that continues to the end. So you have one maestoso tempo. Maestoso implies not fast. It's not slow, but it's not fast. Somewhere there in the middle. Polonaises were not fast necessarily, except sometimes like he says allegro con brio or whatever. So maestoso is sort of the default tempo for polonaises, that very insistent march. Dun, da, da, dun, da, da, dun, and that continues for the whole entire heroic polonaise, including a nice and mysterious kind of dun, da, dun, da, da, dun. Now, you might think this is really radical. You might think, oh my gosh, I can't prove this. Well, no, that's not the way it works. The way it works is it's assumed to be this way unless proven otherwise. So everyone who plays an extremely fast speed in the intro and does different here and does 5 different tempi throughout the whole heroic polonaise is wrong. That's all there is to it. They're wrong, and they're cookie cutter pianists. So begin to think outside the box. If you're a pianist, if you're a serious pianist, you need to start thinking for yourself. Do not listen to recordings and play things the way you hear things in recordings. You need to look at what the composer wanted and ask yourself. Pretend like this were the first time you've ever seen the piece. It were just newly discovered and you never heard any recordings before. That's the way you want to do it. Do not be a cookie cutter pianist. I try not to be a cookie cutter pianist in my interpretations. I try to think for myself. And I want to set you free with your thinking and with your interpretations. So there I go on my rant about cookie cutter pianism. And until we meet again.